Welcome to RealtyCast Global, where we bring insights and advice from top professionals in the global market. Join us for a journey of culture and real estate from countries across the globe. I'd like to welcome my friend Randy Chavers this morning to our podcast, and we're going to talk about the Caribbean, specifically the Dominican Republic. Recently, Randy's purchased a condo in the Dominican Republic, and I want us to go through the process and find out the reasons he purchased in the Dominican Republic and a little bit more about his research. Randy, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here today.
Happy to be here.
And before we begin, what about a little bit of information about your background and what you've done in the real estate industry over the last 30 years?
Oh, sure. Well, actually, it's about 36. And
Wow.
Aging myself here. But I started out in Florida and was got in the business and then opened an office after working for Century 21 for a while, ran that office for about 9 years. Then went off and got involved in various things when the dot-com era was starting. So late 90s, I worked for Homes.com and a couple other things in real estate-specific spaces online for digital. And but to bring us up to today, which is the important part, the last 7 years, I've been working with Coldwell Banker Island affiliates. I was the managing director, and the owners were based in Grand Cayman Island. And they had the master franchise for Coldwell Banker for all of the Caribbean islands, which is about 32 countries. We were in about 16. I recently departed from island affiliates for other opportunities. But during that 7 years, I had a great opportunity to explore all the islands, or many of the islands down there. Including Bermuda, which was part of the master franchise, though it's really in the North Atlantic, not the Caribbean. And so it was a great experience, and I enjoyed it very much.
So after working in that area, the Caribbean, and being involved with the different islands there, what made you choose the Dominican Republic to invest your livelihood in, as far as your money for the future, and buy a condo?
Well, there were a lot of things that I had as criteria, and so every time I would go to an island, I would really think, well, would I want to purchase a place here, and what are the opportunities, what's the pricing, and just like as anyone else would. One of the reasons, we have a visual, I think, that shows a map of Hispaniola, which is the island that Dominican Republic is actually in. It covers 2/3 of Hispaniola. And it's about, to give you an idea for comparison, it's about twice the size of New Jersey. It covers 2/3 of the island. So it's next to Cuba. It's the largest island in the Caribbean. In fact, it has the highest mountain in the Caribbean. It's about 4,000 feet. And the weather up there is very cool. It's about 75 degrees every day versus the coastline. So very, very large island. And in any of these places, one of the things that I became aware of immediately was the need to be near an airport for a variety of reasons. Not only for my benefit to be able to travel back and forth easily with direct flights, which there are many that go into the area that I chose. The area that I chose is on the north coast of the Dominican Republic. And there are two major airports that service that particular area. It's called Puerto Plata, is the province. Okay, so the province of Puerto Plata has a international airport in Puerto Plata, which is about 15 minutes drive time from my condo. And then it also could be serviced by the airport in Santiago. And the airport, Santiago usually was about an hour and 15 minutes away, but now they've built a new road there that gets you from Santiago to Puerto Plata in about 25 minutes. Now, that's not only important for me getting to and from, but also in considering who are your clients going to be. You want to be able to, if you're buying an investment property, you want to be able to have great exposure to as many renters as possible. And so the benefit of the Santiago airport is twofold in that Not only does it, a lot of those flights come directly out of the Northeast and on a number of airlines, and also Santiago is kind of for them, Puerto Plata is the beachfront that they like to go to on weekends. To take a long weekend, they'll go down into the area, and and that's proven to be very attractive. In fact, I just a couple of notes here as far as the projects are going on. They're the Dominican is the fastest growing country in Latin America this past year. It's had an increase of gross domestic product in the order of about 4.5%. So we're looking at a strong economy and a stable government. Again, highly popular with tourists. It has the highest number of visitors this year in the history of the Dominican Republic, with more than 661,000 tourists by air and 250,000 by cruise ships. So no visas required to get there, so that's easy. And a really important thing on the investment side of it, to address your question, is that the prices there are probably a fifth to a fourth of what they could be on, like in Bermuda or Grand Cayman or some of the other islands. So the services are really good. The tourism is excellent. It's dramatically developing. So that was as a big picture for why the Dominican Republic. Those are some of the answers.
So that was a big draw, actually, to get you there into the Dominican Republic. What about if we have someone, in the United States that wants to retire there, or just have a second home, or an investment property just to have as an Airbnb or something like that? Is that possible in that specific area that you purchased in that complex, to have an Airbnb? I mean, can you operate it as an Airbnb? Will they manage people coming in to spend time there, or is that excluded?
No, absolutely. Many of them use Airbnb and some of the other services similar to that. And there is the benefit of the location that I have is that one of the things I wanted was like gated security, 24-hour. Manned 24 hours, that it was that had an on-site management company, which this property does. It's about a 5-minute walk to the beach, as you'll see in a photo in a moment that we'll have. It's got a huge pool, and and there's a very nice restaurant that's on site next to the pool that's open till quite late. So it's got every amenity you could possibly want, and with a homeowner's fee is about $120 a month for my unit.
Well, that's not bad at all.
Yeah.
What about a residency requirement, like a visa?
There's no visa required to get into the DR presently. I mean, so you can come from the U.S. and go there. You're allowed to buy property just as any other citizen in the Dominican would be, or resident. There's no prohibition against foreign ownership. It's a bit of a different experience when you're actually doing the purchasing because, of course, here, we use a lot of times we'll use title companies to, like in Florida in particular. In the Dominican, they don't really have title companies. They have the process is usually you want to find a good reputable real estate broker, and then associate also or get their referral for an attorney, and the attorney handles the whole process. The actual purchasing process is about 7 steps. And so, but it is quite different if you've gone through 70 or 80 pages in a closing document in the U.S. Down there, it's just a few pages. And so it kind of, people find that a bit alarming sometimes because they don't think everything is covered. But it is, and they have they have an excellent system of recording property so that they can do searches for ownership, and you receive a certificate at the end of the transaction.
So it's quicker than what we experience here. I think you said earlier, not today, but to me earlier, that the contract consisted of 1 page.
That's correct. The initial the initial part of the sale is just a letter of intent, more or less, basically what we would refer to as a letter of intent. And then, but in terms of the retirement, to address that further, almost several of the countries, in fact, I think there are about 10 countries that may include some of the European ones as well, but several of the islands have retirement programs. Panama, for example, has what they call the pensionado program, the pensioners program, and so does the Dominican. You can apply for residency there, and you have to be able to prove income of $1,500 a month, I think is what it is currently.
So would that be the fast track? I keep hearing about the fast track residency in Dominican. Is that what you're talking about?
There are actually several different sorts of programs. There's an investment visa. There's a retiree visa, and that we probably can't cover in the scope of the conversation today. But any attorney can who's familiar with residency can give you the different options, and it's a very attractive way for people to go down there and live very inexpensively, probably at about a third of what you could live in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So it's becoming the new Florida, if you will.
Well, it seems like in something you did maybe a year ago for the International Real Estate Federation, you gave a scale showing the number of baby boomers that are actually retiring per day, and it was pretty astounding, the number.
Yeah, there are, and I'm not sure, this is not an updated number, but as of a couple of years ago that you're referring to, there are 10,000 people a day turning 65. Mm-hmm. And about 48% of those people don't have a large amount of money in savings to get them through, and they're pretty much going to depend on Social Security. And one of the attractions here is that you do have a very significantly lower cost of living. And you have access to all these wonderful places. Like one of the things to go back to the particular area that I purchased in, it's about 10 or 15 minutes from a beautiful park with all sorts of rainforests and swimming and caves and what have you. And and that park is about 30 square miles. So there's that amenity. There's it's also about 15 minutes from Cabarete Beach. So, and the other cool thing is the public transportation. You can catch a bus that comes every 10 to 15 minutes to the area, and it's 50 cents. So you can go to Cabarete. Now, Cabarete is famous because it was the place where kite surfing was invented, and it is really basically the kite surfing capital of the world. And and at night they have all these beautiful couches spread among the palm trees, and they have little shops all along that face the beach, and people go there and have a drink and relax, and it's a wonderful experience, beautiful lights and what have you.
So during your experience with the entire Caribbean, and especially during the pandemic period, did you see a lot of younger people moving into those areas that could operate out of their home with their computer? I mean, people moving from the United States and other parts of the world into the Caribbean. Did you see that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I talked to. It was interesting. There are a lot of expats who remote workers, many remote workers who like to go down there, and they can do that. And people wonder if, like, every restaurant that I've been to in the area has Wi-Fi. All right, so that's a big deal, and everybody uses WhatsApp is the communications channel of choice. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to communicate with anybody there, and they're just on their phones constantly, everybody. Mm-hmm. So it's not you're not someplace where there's sheep on the runway. I mean, it's sophisticated, and you can operate digitally for whatever period of time is comfortable for you.
What about the English language there in the Dominican Republic?
It's fairly common, but it does help to know some. You can get by, but it certainly helps to know Spanish, and I would say that for any country in the Caribbean that is Spanish based. So just a few words is very helpful and very appreciated, and the people are very patient. They're lovely folks, so they're very, very patient with you.
You mentioned two things. You needed a good realtor, number one,
yes,
and an attorney.
Correct.
One to find the property for you and sort of walk you through the procedure, and number two, someone that could close it and make sure you have ownership at the very end. Mm-hmm. So in doing that, I've heard that taxi drivers, I've heard that people just on the street can approach you and talk about buying a piece of property or something within within that country.
Yes.
And did you see any of that when you were visiting or when you've been in those different Caribbean countries?
In almost all of them. We kind of joke that if you want to be a real estate agent in many of the countries, that if you have a bicycle and a business card to a cell phone, you can be a realtor or a real estate agent, not a realtor.
So, and I know the NAR has realtors in those countries, and your Coldwell Banker happens to be part of that organization. That's one
correct.
of the
National Association of Realtors.
NAR, absolutely.
So there is a code of ethics that you and I are very familiar with.
Exactly.
And they adhere to those code of ethics. Mm-hmm. So yes, that's why it's a bit still of the Wild West. So, but there are some very capable professionals there, both in real estate and attorneys. You just have to do your due diligence and make sure that you're picking the right one.
Mm-hmm. Politically, you said it's solid.
Yes.
And what about education? People that do want to move into that area and they have children, and children need to be schooled. I know
Sure.
they can do homeschooling and things like that, but what about educational options there?
Many in the case of many of the islands, you have the option between a lot of private schools, which is predominant, I think, in for most people, parents where they want to send their children. But one of the things that I'd recommend for anyone is that if you're wanting to do some of the research on specifically on that, there are some great sites online. That you can, there's an English speaking or an English paper, for example, called DominicanToday.com. And they have a specific section called the Expats Corner. And these are people who are very generous with their suggestions, recommendations, referrals. And it's a great place to go to get current news, to find out what roads are being put in, what is the path of progress for things that are going on in the Dominican Republic right now.
One quick thing about
Sure.
about hospitals, doctors, medical attention.
Yes.
What about that?
That's was a real awakening for me, probably as much as anything. Is that many of these countries are really heavy into medical tourism. And I can tell you from personal experience, I was having a toothache, and this was in the Dominican, in the Puerto Plata area. And the friend who had helped me, the real estate broker that I worked with on this condo, suggested that I go see his dentist. Well, I went to see his dentist and explained everything, spent about 30 minutes, very new equipment, very, very, very nice, clean area. And after the 30 or 45 minutes I spent with her, she made recommendations, and I asked for the bill, and converting it from Dominican dollars, it was our pesos, it was about $8. And I said, well, I can't park in Atlanta for $8. So yes, to answer your question generally, though, the both the medical care, dental care are excellent and infinitely less expensive than what you can find in the U.S.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing that with us. What
Sure.
about, you chose the North Shore,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we have a photo of the building that we're going to show shortly that you bought the condo in.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit more about the North Shore and about what tourists are looking for when they come to that specific location.
Well, it has, that particular area has some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, and so you're very close to that. Again, the pricing, like in the condo that I purchased, and the actual purchase was 4 years ago because it was a pre-construction. So it took them, and of course, part of the construction process was interrupted by COVID. So that made things a bit more difficult. But like I said, it checked all the boxes because it had the great pool. It has a restaurant right there. It's within walking distance of all kinds of little shops. There's a grocery store. There's a pizza place you can be to in a 5-minute walk, and you can be to the beach in 5 minutes. It's also near, like I said, the parks. There's incredible parks. So if you like the outdoors, if you want to go hiking or snorkeling or whatever, you have that opportunity. There's the kiting. There are several small cities that are wonderful that are nearby. One called Sosua and Cabarete and others. So and also, like I said, being near the airport, two of them, and there's also a huge port there. They're increasing the size, actually doubling the size of the port. So it's getting tremendous tourists that are coming in from both the cruises, the cruise lines, and the airport. So for an investment, it's fantastic because you've got such a volume of people coming through there all the time.
You mentioned you had a management company.
That's correct.
And tell me what they do for you.
Everything. And it's wonderful for me because they do all the marketing. They take care of all the cleanup, all the literally everything. Mm-hmm. And so the major correspondence I get with them is if something needs to be replaced that's above normal. I've only had to replace one thing in the last couple of years. There was a small expense, and they handle all of it and just send me the how much money I made that month. So is
the return on the investment pretty good so far?
It's running around 8 to 10%.
That's good.
Yeah. So
that's great.
Yeah, I've been very happy with it.
So with that management fee, they're managing bringing people in.
That's correct.
To rent. They're making sure that everything is clean. They have cleanup services and things like that.
Correct.
If you have a broken hot water heater or something like that, they're going to replace it and send you the bill.
That's correct.
So you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night and worry about something that went wrong. They're covering all the bases. For that service, what would be the percentage that they charge?
You can pretty much expect 20%. Okay. And again, that's when you consider not having to have the concerns that you just discussed, and the fact that it is they do a great job of doing the marketing and filling it up as many days as possible during the month. So I have no argument with that at all. And many of your better services are anywhere, Colombia or Panama or wherever you go. You're looking around 18 to 20%.
So how much time have you spent at your condo?
Sadly, I haven't been able to spend any time there since because I've been very busy with work, and then there was COVID and what have you. So I rented. I plan to go down there again in the next couple of months and actually stay there with one of my sons. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's great. What about the culture? I mean, in that specific area, what do you experience there in terms of the culture of the people, what's going on around that entire island? And have you been involved with any of that, or have you had time to get involved with the people, not the expats, but the people that are there? Yeah,
and that's one of the beautiful things of it. My favorite story is that a friend of mine suggested. He says, "You're going to have to come up to this farm, and I'll introduce you to a friend of mine." And so we went along, and we stopped in this little town, and he goes, "Oh, well, we get out of the car here." And I said, okay. And there was a gentleman waiting for us with 3 horses. And the only way to get to this location was by horseback or a motorbike, which I chose not to do, dirt bike. And so we went up there, and he was pointing he says, Mitimilia. There was all his family lived all around this area. We went up and we ate this incredible food, which an interesting point to that, everyone that I've spoken with who's an expat who's moved down there, from the U.S. They said, I moved here and I lost 40 pounds or 50 pounds or something like that. And it's sort of like the food just grows everywhere. Like when I was at that farm, you just pluck cherries off trees. And so they've always had organic food. It's never been a difference between organic and produced by a company. It's a very healthy lifestyle, and people are very friendly and lovely and helpful.
So not a lot of preservatives and additives.
No, which is really nice,
to say the least.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's great. What about your wife? Has she been there? Has she seen it?
Yes, she has. She saw the condo. This was post-COVID, and we were down for a wedding. And so we spent a few days there, and she'll be going back down, and we'll be staying at the condo here soon and enjoying some of that. I'll be going down there without work.
That's going to be a pleasure.
Yeah, it's going to be a different
trip.
Experience to be on an island and not have to work all day and into the night. So,
what about your children? You said you're taking your son down. Have they seen it?
They have not yet. No,
they haven't. So it's going to be a surprise.
We're all they were a bit late on getting their passports, and so we're waiting on that to happen, and then I'll be taking them down individually.
We know that the people in the U.S. make up a great part of people moving into the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
But what about from Europe? Do you have people moving from Europe into some of those Caribbean islands, not just Dominican Republic, but other islands?
Absolutely. In fact, I think some of our maybe 40 or 50% of our renters are Hungarian.
Really?
Or they're from Eastern Europe. So it's very international. And different cities have different makeups in terms of where, like there's a town that's east of us about an hour called Las Arenas.
Mm-hmm.
And it has many French and Italian expats live there. And and everyone who moves there seems to want to open a restaurant for their particular kind of cuisine. So
I'm sure,
yeah. So it's a very international field there. It's always exciting and interesting to meet people.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, our time's almost up, but you've given us great insight to an individual that truly did what you wanted to do, and that was to find a property outside the United States. You had your mind on future retirement. You bought that property 4 years ago, and you've had an income stream ever since the day it was completed. So that's fantastic. We're going to have you back at some other point in time, and we'll talk about other case studies, people that you've been involved with throughout the world, because you've got a huge background of investments and things like that, directing people to certain investments around the world. So we appreciate that time today that we've had, and we look forward to the future and bringing you back.
Thanks, Hugh. I'd be delighted.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Thanks for joining in on today's episode of RealtyCast Global. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes air.